We're up, we're live, hey! Welcome to VMworld 2017. How are we? We doing all right? Excellent, excellent. I see a few familiar faces. I guess I've been doing this long enough that's going to happen, right? How's everybody doing today? We good? We awesome? Excellent, excellent. How many of us use vRealize automation today? How many of us use NSX today? Oh good, there's some overlap. You guys already know what I'm going to talk about. So we've got a half an hour here, right? And they're gonna start beating me up at like 25 minutes. We've got a half an hour. We're going to talk about some of the cool things we can do when we pair up vRealize automation and VMware NSX, right? Because we can do a lot of cool stuff, especially today. Right? Any of you guys come to this session last year? Anybody? Nobody saw it last year? Tim, you don't count. So I just figured I'd ask. vRealize automation has grown tremendously in its maturity with regards to NSX and NSX integration over the last year. So some cool stuff going on. So we're going to overview everything. We're going to go through kind of a quick hit on the services available, what we can do with NSX and vRealize automation, and then we're going to kind of wrap it all up at the very, very end. So real quick, anybody not know what VMware NSX is? I mean, it's kind of a thing these days, right? It gives us our layer 2 through 7 network services, ultimately abstracted and built in software containers, allowing us to kind of not get rid of the physical network. That's a terrible way of putting it. But it allows us to simplify our physical network and take advantage of all of the cool things we've been doing with compute for how long now? And do the same kinds of things with networking, right? With switching, with layer 2 switching, with layer 3 routing, with load balancing, with firewalling, right? All of these cool things we have tied in, and there's a huge ecosystem for partner solutions, because as much as I would like to say we do everything, we don't, right? And better than that, it's all API driven, right? Yeah, we've got the web client. We can actually do it all point and click and click and click and click, but I can also do everything through an API. So if I want to write a script to go out and do something, I can whip out Python, I can whip out PowerShell, I can whip out whatever my language of choice is, and pull together a script so long as it can do HTTPS stuff, right? It's just a REST API. We can do all of it. And that's how vRealize automation actually ties into us, is through our APIs. vRealize automation, I'm going to assume we also kind of know what that is, right? I mean, this is automation for my entire data center. I can build anything. I can deploy anything with vRealize automation. If I can talk to it either natively or by way of something I can do through vRealize Orchestrator, I can automate it. Right? vRealize automation, we've been talking about for a while this thing called X as a service, anything as a service, and that includes the network. Right? Not only does it provide the automation, it provides the entire lifecycle management for your applications, for your infrastructure, for your data center. Right? We go in and we start tying in business policy and business process and governance and all of these cool things, and I can provision not just to a vSphere infrastructure, I can manage everything through vSphere and NSX and vCenter and deal with all the stuff we have, but what about, how many of us have multiple hypervisors in our shops? Right? They're out there, right? Shops are out there where I've got vSphere and I've got Hyper-V and maybe I've got KVM. I might have OpenStack along with maybe I've got a service provider doing vCloud Director. Maybe I have a service provider that's not using VMware stuff at all, right? What about Amazon? What about Azure? Right? There are lots of different things out there. vRealize automation can help us tie all of that together. Right? So when we get into automating, with the network, right? Let's start tying NSX and vRealize automation together and why we want to think about this, right? Multiple machines, right? When I deploy stuff in vRealize automation, I am not deploying a network thing. I'm not deploying a virtual machine. I'm deploying what? An application, right? Some kind of application service is likely what I'm deploying. Is that a system? Is that a virtual machine? Or is it many? How many applications do we have that run on a single operating system instance today? Not many, right? Because I've got front ends, and I've got middleware, and I've got databases, and I've got, analytics, and I've got all kinds of stuff, don't I? I mean, that's a lot of different stuff. Do all of those things live in a common network? Do they have common network and security needs? Maybe, maybe not, right? So we can tie all of the networking stuff in with the rest of the application and build policies particular to that application stack and the different components within, right? And it's completely automated. Completely automated. Everything down to my NAT rules, if I need those to get into. So it just keeps going and going and going. What about consistency? If I deploy the same application manually 3 different times, how many different policy sets am I going to have? 3, right? Not because I'm doing things differently on purpose, not because I want to do things differently, but 3 different people deployed these, and everybody's got their own little take on something, right? If I automate it, and I build all my policy into the blueprint, it's all the same every time. Right? Is consistency something we're driving for in our data centers? All day long. Right? All day long. How about isolation? Do I want my test version of my application and my production version of my application talking to each other? Not if I can avoid it, right? I can provide that isolation, again, through that consistent policy to say, these guys can talk to those guys, and that's it. And this helps us drive the entire software-defined data center. We start tying this into storage, we start tying it into compute, we start tying the network into it, and all of a sudden, we have this software-defined data center thing that we've been talking about, right? It's all just pretty and magical. So here's just kind of building on the idea of my multi-machine blueprints provide me different policies, right? I can have different networking configurations. So I've got, my web VMs have a different policy set than my app VMs that have a different policy set from my database VMs, and then I've got some kind of overarching policy on top of that. And maybe this is directly attached to my physical network. Maybe this is NATed off from my physical network. Maybe this is just a different configuration than what I need traditionally, so this is kind of a one-off thing, but I still want those consistent policies, even though the application instance is slightly tweaked maybe, right? And I can do this again and again and again. Now, who all needs to be involved? Right? Real quick, who needs to be involved with this? Well, the network admin is going to do the things like building the network stuff, building out the NSX piece. My security admin is also going to do some building in the NSX piece, right? Because that's where most of my security comes in. My distributed firewall, my security policies, my tagging, my groupings, all of this stuff comes in. My security guy is going to deal with that, right? Because that's who's normally going to deal with that stuff anyway. My cloud guys are going to end up building the blueprints, which are going to include things like the networks that my networking guys have built and the policies that my security guys have defined. That's all going to come together, and they're going to turn around and publish and entitle those blueprints, those applications, those services that we want our users, our consumers, to be able to provision. Right? And when we talk about cloud consumer, we're probably talking about, other IT folks? I mean, we're probably not talking about Bill from accounting, but we might be. Right? That all depends on how your organization is structured. So my cloud consumer, just starts building, and based on policies we build whatever they're allowed to build, however many instances they're allowed to build, and all the policy is all applied right there. Easy, right? Pretty cool stuff. And we do it all in a cool little drag and drop interface that looks something like this. This is our blueprint. And you can see we can come in, we can do different machines, different software. I can actually use VRA to manage software as well. Software and network, security, I can define policies, I can build everything out that I need to build out. Load balancers, firewall policies, you name it. So let's talk about some of this in particular. What are some of the specifics, right? Instead of all this cool, look at the shiny, right? Load balancing. How many of my applications could benefit from a load balancer? Well, if I've got 2 instances of a piece of my application, I could probably benefit from that. Now, it obviously is going to depend on the application. So I can deploy load balancers inline. I can deploy them just right alongside the application workloads. I've got my flexibility there, right? Now, we've been able to do this for quite a while, right? This is not a new feature in NSX, but not a new feature in vRealize Automation, rather. But in VRA 7.3, the latest and greatest version, we can now do complete customization of our load balancers. So we can go in and we can define which load balancing policy, right? What kind of algorithm do I want to use? Do I want to just do a round-robin load balancer? Do I want to do a least connections? How do I want to define my persistence, right? I can actually go through and do the full configuration of my load balancer if I want to. And I could set this up in the blueprint as customizable by the end user as well. But once I deploy it, what happens if my application gets bigger? Well, I've got to go change things, right? I've got to go make the load balancer bigger. Maybe I need to change my algorithms. Maybe I need to change my health checks because I misconfigured them the first time around. You know what I can do now? I can change all that through vRealize Automation. Right? I can log into my portal and I can say, hey, I've got this load balancer in my vApp and it's not set up the way I need it to be set up today. Right? When I deployed it, yeah, it was great. But now I can go right through and do this right in vRealize Automation today, right? Before vRealize Automation 7.3, we had to go in through the NSX UI and do this out of band, if you will. So this was an unmanaged change, or we had to stitch together our own orchestration to do this within VRA, right? Now it's just part of the application that I've deployed. I can now build additional NAT, right? We can have VRA figure out all the NAT for us. We can figure out what we want to NAT, right? I can do different edge sizing. So that's kind of thrown in there, but we need it somewhere, right? Prior to vRealize Automation 7.3, my edge was always a compact edge. It was an itty-bitty little guy. And what would we do? One of our most common things is we would go in and we would set up a workflow leveraging the event broker to go in and change the size of the edge because I don't want a compact edge, right? That's a single processor and half a gig of RAM. That's a little bitty thing. My application may or may not fit that small set of requirements. So I wanted to make my edge bigger. I wanted to deploy a large or an extra large or a quad large load balancer. Now I can do that during deployment. I can do that in the blueprint. We can muck around with our port forwarding and our NAT rules after the fact, right? Because how many of our applications are completely static? There we go with that things change. Even as much as we try to make them consistent and define policy around them, I can now manipulate those rules in vRealize Automation for NAT. And then we have everybody's favorite, microsegmentation. Well, we're still pulling that one along, right? Microsegmentation is spectacular, right? This is where the security guys come in. So I can define my different networks, I can define my different policies, I can assign different tags maybe to virtual machines or to tiers of virtual machines that attach that virtual machine logically to a security policy or include that virtual machine in a security policy, or a security group rather, and then the security policy applies to that. And whatever's in that policy, whatever set of rules is in that policy, whether they're distributed firewall rules, they're antivirus, vulnerability management solutions, partner firewalls, whatever it might be that ties into that policy will be applied to everything in that group by way of the security tag. And I could apply a security tag for finance and HR and whatever, business units. I could do different application types, whatever it might be. And the cool thing about it is not only can I tie in all these advanced services, but because this is all policy driven, I can repeat it over and over and over and over and over again. Quickly, easily, pretty straightforward. So how might I do this? Well, here I've got, a good old-fashioned 3-tier app. I probably want more than one database server, don't I? Just saying. It's an example. So I've got my web servers, and I've got my app servers, and I've got my database servers. And they're all attached to some router. Maybe this is a distributed logical router. Maybe this is an edge services gateway. Right? I've defined that in the blueprint. I probably want to set up policies that say, my web servers can only talk to my app servers on my application port, right? I don't need a whole lot more than that. Oh, and my web policy also says, hey, you can talk to me over HTTPS, because that's what a web server does, yes? And my app servers, I want to talk to my database server, but only on the database port, right? 1433 or 3306 or whatever database I happen to be using, right? Doesn't make any difference in context here. So I can define all my policies, my blue, green, and orange policies in NSX, right? In our service composer. There's my load balancer. And set up different security groups. And I've got something that encompasses the whole thing. Right? Because maybe this is an application for my finance organization, and that my finance organization has some global set of policies that every one of their applications needs to adhere to, right? So I have this common set of policies. Here we've got, I can get to my shared services, and I want to scan antivirus, right? If we look at what we've got up on the screen, that's a pretty reasonable set of policies that everything should adhere to. My web tier has their own particular thing. We've also got an IPS policy in place because, the web is a dangerous place. My app tier has their app policies, and then my database tier allows database queries, and it also has a vulnerability management thing struck in. So we go and apply. There we go. We go and apply all of these things, right? Each of these tiers will get a different security tag, right? And that security tag will include them in those different security groups. Those different security groups have those policies applied, right? Everything's just matched up, and I can deploy over and over and over again. But what if my security requirements change? What if my compliance requirements change? What if I have to add services to my workloads, my applications that I've deployed? Because that's a thing, right? Oh, well, we just got audited and we failed here and here and here and here and here. I need to go change this. I need to go add to this. I need to go do the things to fix that audit, for example. I can go in and create new security tags. I can apply new security tags. I can take away security tags. Maybe I decided that finance is not the structure, the organizational structure that I wanted this application to live in. I can take the finance tag off of it and put the HR tag on it, because maybe it's all about payroll and not end of quarter line of business, accounting, whatever it is, right? Let's make some stuff up here. I can change things based on the changing needs of my business. And again, I can do that all through vRealize automation, so I don't have to go jumping through hoops, jumping through multiple UIs. My consumers, assuming they're privileged enough to do so, can go in and deal with all this instead of throwing it back on the NSX admins, throwing it back on the VRA admins, and that kind of stuff. This is one of my favorite things. And this is another thing we used to use the event broker for a lot, right? We would set up a workflow to turn on HA on my edge services gateways, because my edge services gateways I'm deploying for load balancing. I'm deploying sometimes as routers. I might be deploying as VPN endpoints. And what do I want for all of those things? High availability, right? That's really a good thing. Now we can actually, there's a little checkbox that says, yes, I want an active standby high availability. I want to leverage the edge high availability that's provided, so that I'm not stuck if an ESXi host fails and takes my edge services gateway out of the picture for me, right? So we can actually deploy HA at or configure HA at deployment time when we request the application. Right, now I can configure HA. So not everything has to be highly available. Right, I can deploy things and not have them highly available, and deploy other things and have my edges highly available. Right, good stuff. Good stuff. There's my sizing. Right, we kind of already talked about that. We've got different sizes for the edge for different use cases, for different workload cases. I can change the size as we go. Right, as I deploy, whatever it might be. This is kind of a big deal, isn't it? I mean, this isn't NSX specific. This is more vRealize automation specific. But I'm doing all this networking stuff. Well, what does that imply? That means I need IP addresses, right? Which means, how am I doing my IPAM? I mean, hopefully it's something better than Excel. I kind of laugh at that because that's Microsoft Excel has been my IPAM for a long, long time. So what we've done is we have extended what we have in the IPAM integration framework in vRealize automation, so we can now tie into a variety of different IP address management solutions, and even go so far as to leverage them for maybe my NAT networks, right? So I can tie in all kinds of things and start managing all of my IP addresses in vRealize automation through my IP address management tools. So we can go out and deal with that. Infoblox is an example there, right? Probably the 800-pound gorilla in that space, right? Oh. I built this slide deck and I forgot what this slide was all about. Isn't that awesome? So in NSX, right, when we want to talk to anything, or not in NSX, in vRealize automation, whenever we want to talk to anything, we need to configure endpoints, right? Who are we talking to? What are we talking to? What's there? NSX is a first-class citizen now. Right, that's what this is all about. So prior to this, NSX was kind of like, it kind of tagged along with your vCenter endpoint. Right? If you remember that, if you've worked with vRealize automation, when I configured my vCenter endpoint, there was another tab that said, oh yeah, NSX or vCloud Networking and Security, right here. You kind of do that, and we're going to piggyback right on top of vCenter. Well, now NSX is a first-class citizen. It actually has its own endpoint, which allows for a lot of this deeper integration, a lot of these cool things we can do, because now we're talking directly to NSX Manager. We're not reliant on talking to vCenter and saying, well, vCenter can have us do these things, and for anything else we have to talk to Orchestrator, and Orchestrator can talk directly to NSX. Right now, vRealize automation can talk directly to NSX. So, look at that. All right, just so you guys know, this is kind of a first, a historical first. They're going to give me my 5-minute warning in 3 minutes. And we're about at the end. How brilliant is this? I have never done this before. I have never come in under time before. So thank you guys for being such an awesome audience. Summarize everything. Right? Let's wrap everything up here for a couple of minutes. Right? VRA lets us automate everything, right? Not just compute now. Right? The network is a first-class automated citizen today. Right? This is a cool thing. Right? This is a cool thing. This makes my overall data center operations just smooth and simple by comparison. I'm not going to say this is going to make everything easy, because we all know better. Right? I'm not going to lie to you. But we can make everything nice and easy and straightforward and consistent. And what does that do for what happens when it breaks? Right? If it's all consistent, when it breaks, I have a fixed set of things that I have to deal with now, right? And it's the same application by application. Come take more classes. Hey, how's that, right? We've got our NSX curriculum, right? We've got an install, configure, manage class. We have a troubleshooting and operations class. We have a design class for NSX. We have our vRealize automation install, configure, manage, right? The ICM, the install, configure, manage is where we kind of start. That's our baseline to get in, and then we go from there. In vRealize automation, we also have a design and deploy class. We've got a couple of different automation classes. If you want to really make vRealize automation sing, We've got a couple of cool classes about automating that dive deeper into leveraging VRA and vRealize Orchestrator and PowerShell to fully automate everything in your software-defined data center. We've got our NSX communities. We've got out there, we've got an NSX extensibility kit where we provide a lot of really cool examples to go above and beyond even what we've talked about here for automation. So that's a good place to go. We've got an API for anything more that you want that's maybe not included and not easily done directly through vRealize automation. We've got a whole API white paper and documentation that'll help you figure all of that stuff out. So, come register for classes. We've got discounts on our on-demand classes. We have discounts on certifications. Right, we've got an entire certification track for network virtualization with NSX. We've got another certification track for cloud management and automation with vRealize automation. We're doing exams here this week at a 50% discount. We are doing, if you register for the exam this week but are not ready to take it yet, right? We've got a 25% discount on those. You got to take them by October. At end of October, I think, if I recall. I'd have to go up and look at the documentation. And then support. Hey, we've got cool new support stuff. I don't know how much of the VMware Skyline stuff you've heard about yet, but this is really slick stuff, right? You can go see our guys over in the Solutions Exchange. They'll tell you all about it and how it's making support just dramatically easier for us, right? So, questions? Are we good? This is the Q&A part. This is where you get to play Stump the Chump if you want. Or you can decide that I was just that boring and take off. Don't forget to fill out the event survey, right? Tell us if it was good, bad, otherwise. Ask why that Kruger guy was even up there talking because he can't spell NSX. I don't know, whatever, right? Whatever. So I'm here if anybody needs to pick my brain or wants to pick my brain, or we're all here in the booth. We can get you all kinds of answers about all kinds of things, right? Thanks. Hey, look at that. I'm even getting applause. How awesome. How awesome. Thanks.